This week we're talking about Chapter 4, which is really all about family communication and the creation of family meetings. As you have probably figured out, either through this course or in comparing your family to others, each family has its own identity. No two families are alike, and there are a lot of things that make up family differences and family uniquenesses. And it's really the interaction of everyone in the family that helps create sort of a culture in that family. So as the textbook talks about, that's known as a relational culture. That term, relational culture, really just means a family's group of norms or rules or rituals that kind of come together to create what is expected of that group of people together. So it's as the book says, a private world of rules and understandings and meanings that create this relationship or the relationships in a family. So I like to say it's sort of your family's normal, and every family has a different normal. And I think it's important for us to kind of think about that as we approach this chapter and the concepts we're talking about in the course. We started that discussion actually a couple weeks ago when we were looking at the weekly discussion topic on if a stranger came to your house, what would you tell that person if they had to live with you or your family? And throughout that discussion, we began to talk about the things that were unique to our family and what kinds of rules and values and norms are part of our family. So you started that thought process a couple weeks ago, and this week now we're talking about it more specifically. So I'm asking you to kind of think about what are some family rules or rituals that help define your family or make it different from other families. So what I've tried to do is think about in my own family, what are some of the rules or norms that are specific. So when I think about growing up, there were a couple things in my family of origin. For instance, my parents were very big on us calling adults in our world or in our lives Mr. and Mrs. So every adult in my life was Mr. or Mrs. And whether it was a neighbor, close family friend, someone from school, but everyone was Mr. or Mrs., unless, of course, they were an aunt and uncle related. And, that was sort of a norm in our family. And another norm that I think of, my parents believed in the Clean Plate Club, so we had to finish everything that was on our plate. And we also had to pitch in together as a family and clear the table, set the table, do the dishes together. We all kind of worked together as a family. So those are a couple of examples of family rules or norms that I can think of when I was growing up. When I think about the family that Eric and I are creating together, my family right now, some of those norms are the same and some are new and different. For instance, not all adults in my kids' lives are Mr. and Mrs. Some are, but some aren't. Some my kids call by their first name. I don't believe in the Clean Plate Club, so my kids don't have to necessarily eat everything on their plate. But if you ask them, one of the rules we have is that you have to eat as many bites as you are old. So my 5-year-old will say, "Can I be done?" And I'll tell him, well, you just need to have 5 more bites. And he'll eat 5 more bites and be done. So that's sort of a variation, I guess, of the Clean Plate Club. And it's probably something he'll talk about in 20 years when he thinks back about growing up. Lastly, we do still, I believe in having the kids help clear the table and set the table and kind of pitch in together to get the work done around the house. So I guess that family rule did sort of continue even in my family right now. So in the textbook, they talk about constitutive rules, and those are some of the things that I just shared about relational rules and constitutive rules. Those are the ought-tos or shoulds of a family. And so the relational rules, the ought-tos and the shoulds, are the ones that I just shared. So my kids ought to help out around the house, and they ought to or should eat most everything on their plate and eat, however many bites as they are old. The constitutive rules are sort of what counts as communication in your family. So, for instance, in the family that I grew up in, we're very loud, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're angry. So one of the constitutive rules in my family of origin is being loud doesn't necessarily mean that you're angry. And that's not true in my husband's family, the way he grew up. And so that was sort of something we had to work together on as we were creating our own family. And as we were getting to know one another and creating a relationship, that for him being loud meant being angry, and for me that was just normal. So that's sort of an example of a constitutive rule. The important thing to remember about these family rules is that they're sort of learned informally. Some of them are very direct and explicit. Some of them are sort of understood, unconscious, unspoken. And sometimes rules can be negotiable. Sometimes they can change over time. The example I think of is with my kids. When we moved to East Lansing, we have neighbors who when we first met them, of course, my kids called them Mr. and Mrs. But as we've gotten to know them and as they've become close family friends of ours, they now call the adults by their first names. And so that's sort of an example of a rule or a family norm that changed over time. And for me, I would say it's because we became closer to them and they've become closer family friends of ours. And so that's sort of why that changed. But sometimes they change because of age, over time. Sometimes it's development, so as kids get older. Sometimes they're just circumstances change. So it's kind of important to remember that. I think it's interesting, and maybe you'll find that too throughout the week when you are in your discussion groups, to think about these norms, these family rules and rituals, and how they may not seem that unique, but really they are. This last weekend, I was up north with our family, and there were 4 other families, so there were 5 families total. We were skiing for the weekend, and it was interesting because one of the evenings we all went out to dinner, so we were sharing 3 tables, so there were 20 of us sharing 3 tables, and so there were 5 families, and it was interesting to see how the different families approached being out to dinner. So, for instance, when the server came and took my order, he asked what my kids wanted, and they were sitting at a kids' table. So I said, well, they know what they want. They can go ahead and order for themselves. That's just something we do. My kids, I had shared with them what was on the menu when we first got there. I knew what they were going to order, and then they order on their own. I didn't ever really think much about that until I watched other parents there actually order for their kids. And so that, to me, I guess, is an example of a norm in our family that I hadn't thought about before, maybe thinking about it, reflecting back on it when considering this chapter. So, it may be the kind of thing that at first might be kind of hard to think about, but as you talk with others in your group, you may kind of find more and more examples. So it's kind of important to think about it and reflect on it. I think it will help further your understanding of the concept. There is an extra credit opportunity that I wanted to make available. It will be due 1 week from today. So it is basically giving students the opportunity to share their genogram with the class. So what I'm asking, if you're interested, is that you audio describe your genogram for the class. The way you're going to do that is using a program called Jing. And Jing will allow you to do a screenshot and an audio description for up to 3 minutes. And so in order to take part in this extra credit, you will need to first download Jing, then bring up your genogram and describe it for the class, so a 3 to 5 minute description of your genogram, and email that to me by the deadline, which will be a week from today. And then what I'm going to do is share those web links to Ning so that others in the class can see them. So it's very similar if we were in a face-to-face classroom, that you would come up to the front of class and just kind of walk through your genogram for the class. So if you're interested in that, email me, spicerj@msu.edu. I will send you the instructions on how to do that, and you will get 5 points of extra credit for doing that. It's not only a great way to earn some extra points in the class, but also to share your genogram so people can get an idea of the different kinds of family structures and the different ways of approaching the genogram assignment. With that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for your participation and your involvement in the course. It's been an exciting couple of weeks, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you as the semester goes on.